Behind Van Halen's explosive riffs, wild stage antics, and headline-making feuds, one man held it all together, quietly, powerfully, and with more sacrifice than fans ever knew. But his journey wasn't just about bass lines and backing vocals. It was about loyalty tested, credits lost, and a betrayal discovered not with a phone call, but on the internet. In this untold chapter of rock history on Royal Time of Hollywood, you'll learn how Michael Anthony's low-end rhythm carried the band, even when the spotlight never turned his way. One moment in particular changed everything, and it didn't happen on stage. Brace yourself, because what's coming might completely rewrite your view of Van Halen. The foundations of a musician. Michael Anthony's musical journey began long before the stadium lights. He was born into a home where music was a living, breathing thing. His father, Walter Sobolewski, was a trumpet player, and the sound of that brass instrument practicing in the halls of their home laid the groundwork for Michael's future. Following his father's lead, Michael started out on the trumpet, learning the discipline and group dynamics required for a school marching band after his family moved to Southern California in the mid-1960s. However, the late 60s were a time of sonic revolution. At 13, Michael's ears turned toward the electric roar of rock and roll. Wanting to stand out in a sea of aspiring guitarists and drummers, he chose the bass. His first instrument was a modified Fender Mustang, given to him by a friend, which he converted to a bass by simply removing 2 strings. His father, seeing his son's undeniable talent, eventually bought him a proper Victory copy of a Fender Precision bass. Influenced by giants like Jack Bruce of Cream and John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, Michael developed a technical foundation that would soon become essential to the world's most dangerous rock band. Though naturally left-handed, he learned to play right-handed, a testament to the adaptability that would define his entire career. The meeting of mammoth proportions. In the early 70s, Michael was a fixture in the San Gabriel Valley music circuit, fronting a power trio called Snake. It was during these club crawls and school dances that Snake's path crossed with a band called Mammoth, led by 2 brothers named Alex and Eddie Van Halen. The turning point came when Mammoth's PA system failed during a gig at Pasadena High School. In a gesture of professional kindness that would define his personality, Anthony offered to let Mammoth use Snake's equipment. That act of generosity didn't just save the show, it made the Van Halen brothers take notice of the man behind the bass. When Mammoth's original bassist, Mark Stone, departed, Eddie and Alex knew exactly who to call. They invited Michael to a jam session in a garage. The chemistry was instantaneous. Anthony didn't just bring a steady rhythm. He brought a soaring, high-pitched backing vocal capability that added a whole new dimension to their sound. Mammoth soon became Van Halen, and with David Lee Roth on vocals, the classic lineup was born. The anchor in the storm. As Van Halen exploded onto the scene in 1978, Michael Anthony became the secret weapon. While Eddie was reinventing the guitar and Roth was the ultimate showman, Michael was the bedrock. His vocal harmonies on tracks like Runnin' with the Devil and Jamie's Cryin' became a trademark of the band's identity, as essential as Eddie's brown sound. Initially, things were fair. Michael was a 20% partner, sharing in the profits and the debts. He was low-maintenance, dependable, and professional, a stark contrast to the volatile personalities surrounding him. But as the band's fame skyrocketed, the internal power dynamic began to shift. The financial pie began to tilt toward the brothers and Roth, leaving Michael increasingly vulnerable. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to check out the other stories and shocking updates on our channel. We've covered many incredible celebrity journeys, tragic endings, and untold Hollywood secrets that you don't want to miss. Binge watch our previous videos to discover more surprising facts, emotional stories, and where your favorite stars are today. Your support helps us bring you more powerful content like this, so don't forget to explore, watch more, and stay tuned for the next video. The 1984 betrayal. The contract controversy. The year 1984 should have been a total celebration. The album 1984 was a juggernaut, spawning hits like Jump and Panama. But behind the scenes, it was a period of absolute heartbreak for Michael Anthony. According to former manager Noel Monk, Michael was cornered. Backstage during the tour, just hours before a performance, he was reportedly pressured by Eddie, Alex, and Roth into signing away his future songwriting credits and royalties. Monk describes a scene where the three stood over him, demanding he sign a retroactive agreement. To avoid jeopardizing the tour and to keep the band he loved together, Michael signed. The financial loss was staggering. By forfeiting his stake, Michael lost out on millions of dollars from an album that would eventually go diamond, selling over 10 million copies. For decades, his legacy as a co-creator was legally eroded, leaving him as a hired musician in the eyes of the law, despite his foundational role. Eddie Van Halen's public criticism. The financial betrayal was one thing, but the personal attacks that came years later were perhaps even more painful. In the 2000s, Eddie Van Halen began to publicly diminish Michael's skills. In a 2015 Billboard interview, Eddie claimed he had to show Michael how to play every note, implying that Anthony was little more than a puppet. Michael was blindsided. He later stated that these claims were completely fabricated. He had always learned the parts himself. The fans and critics agreed. Michael's decades of flawless live performances spoke for themselves. The comments were emotionally draining, coming from a man Michael had considered a brother for most of his life. After Eddie's passing in 2020, Michael expressed deep regret that they never had the chance to mend that rift. The erasure and the internet discovery. By the late 90s, Michael was being phased out. On Van Halen 3, he only played on 3 tracks. By 2004, for the Best of Both Worlds tour with Sammy Hagar, Michael had to take a massive pay cut and sign a contract as a hired hand, just to be on the stage. But the final blow was the way it ended. In 2006, Eddie decided to put his son, Wolfgang, on bass. Michael didn't get a phone call. He didn't get a letter. He found out he was no longer in Van Halen the same way the fans did, by reading about it on the internet. It was a cold end to a decades-long tenure, a literal erasure of his presence from the band's official imagery. Life beyond the brothers, Chickenfoot and the Circle. While Van Halen chose to move on without him, Michael Anthony didn't stop playing. He leaned into his friendship with Sammy Hagar, forming several successful ventures. There was the other half, which celebrated the Van Hagar era and the supergroup Planet Us. The biggest success outside of the main band came with Chickenfoot in 2008. Teaming up with Hagar, Joe Satriani, and Chad Smith, Michael proved he was still a top-tier musician. Their debut album hit the top 10, proving there was plenty of creative fuel left in his tank. Later, he joined the Circle, continuing to perform the songs he helped make famous to crowds that still chanted his name. The tribute that never was. Following Eddie's death, there were whispers of a grand tribute tour. Alex Van Halen reportedly reached out to Michael and David Lee Roth. Joe Satriani was even discussed as the guitarist. Michael expressed a genuine interest in giving the fans, and Eddie, one last goodbye. However, the plans fell apart. Reports suggest that David Lee Roth resisted the tribute format, and Alex Van Halen's own health issues made a grueling tour impossible. For Michael Anthony, the chance for final closure vanished. The Van Halen family remained fractured, and the dream of a full-circle moment faded into silence. Legacy and the Vault. Today, the Van Halen legacy is guarded fiercely by Wolfgang and Valerie Bertinelli. Valerie has famously opposed any biopic, wanting to protect Eddie's memory from Hollywood sensationalism. Meanwhile, Wolfgang has become the voice of a new generation, defending his father's integrity while pursuing his own path with Mammoth WVH. Wolfgang has confirmed the existence of a massive vault of unreleased Eddie Van Halen recordings. While fans clamor for these tracks, Wolfgang has remained cautious, insisting that nothing will be released that doesn't meet his father's high standards. Michael Anthony, now 70, remains a class act. Despite the contracts, the public insults, and the silent firing, he speaks of his time in Van Halen with a mix of pride and nostalgia. He was the low end of the greatest rock band in the world, the voice that climbed above the riffs, and the man who chose loyalty over ego until the very end. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the untold history of Van Halen on Royal Time of Hollywood. If you enjoyed this look at the life of Michael Anthony, don't forget to like this video, Drop a comment with your favorite Van Halen memory, and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from rock history.